Hello and welcome to BodyShop News Australia's March 2022 webinar, The Trends Shaping Body Repair in 2022. My name is Albert Malik and I'm the Managing Editor at BodyShop News. I'd like to begin by thanking our sponsors. They make these events possible, so thank you very much to AMA Group, Anest Iwata, the Collision Repair Expo, and Sherwin Automotive Finishes. Now, I'd like to go through a little bit of housekeeping. To ensure that you can experience the webinar properly, we suggest you use a laptop or a desktop computer and make sure you're connected over a high-speed internet connection. Try to use Firefox or Google Chrome to watch this webinar, as you'll get the best experience. Shouldn't be a problem if you're using Apple Safari or Microsoft Edge, but if you do have any problems, give Chrome or Firefox a try. And if at any point the audio or the video gets stuck or you have problems, just try refreshing your browser. In Windows, you can press F5 on your keyboard, and on macOS, you can press Command R to refresh. Now, on the right side of your screen, you should be able to see a white pane with a set of buttons. If you can't see this, there should be buttons in the bottom right corner of your screen that will bring this up. But if you are accessing with a smartphone or a tablet, they might be hidden in the More menu. So have a look around there, but you should be able to find the sections that I'm about to explain. So first of all, there's the chat button, and that will allow you to text chat with us and the guest speakers here, as well as the attendees, all of the people who are attending today. If you want to ask the panel a question, click the questions button and post your question there. The questions will be visible to the panel throughout the webinar, but we plan to address them in the Q&A session after the webinar. You can also upvote any of the questions already in the questions tab if you want to ask the same question listed in the queue. And finally, we're going to do some live polls during the webinar, and you can access them by clicking the polls button. They'll appear during the course of the webinar, so take a look there when the time comes. Okay, let's get started. I'd like to welcome Michel Malik, publisher of BodyShop News and moderator of our webinar today. Michel?
Thank you, Albert, and good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all of you listening to us from around the world. We've got people from everywhere, from the UK, from the US, from Asia, from the Middle East, from Australia, and from New Zealand. Welcome, everyone. My name is Michel Malik. Obviously, I'm the publisher of BodyShop News magazines, and I'm the CEO of the company. I've been around the industry for a long, long time. I've been involved in automotive for more than 40 years. I've been a car enthusiast since I was a kid. I collect cars, I comment on certain events, and I judge at some car shows. I've competed in different forms of motorsports, including circuit, track, rally. I even have a motoring program called The World on Wheels that's been running since 1996. And I've been a car nut, as you would call it, from a long, long time. But enough talking about me. Let me introduce you to my panelists today, my co-presenters. Robert Snook is a genuine collision industry fan. He's got more than 37 years experience. He's a global speaker. He's actually a conference moderator for IBIS. He's also a group director of MG Cannon. That's a multi-award winning UK body shop, MSO. He's got a lot of shops, a lot of numbers. He's also the group director at Business Success Global. It's a collision industry business coaching, training, and mentoring company. He's globally respected as a businessman, as a speaker, moderator, a coach, and a mentor. And he's held senior management, director, and business owner levels in corporate and in private companies. Thank you, Robert, and welcome aboard.
Thank you, Michel. Hi, everyone.
My next speaker is David Luehr. David is an old but young friend. He's a student of the industry for more than 35 years. He's worked his way up to a successful collision business owner, and he's authored and co-authored one of the most exciting books about this industry called The Secrets of America's Greatest Body Shops. He's the founder of Elite Bodyshop Solutions. It's an organization dedicated to the success of the independent collision repairer. He's a well-known industry expert who has inspired an international audience of thousands to improve their business and their lives. He's an international speaker, a trainer, and a leadership coach. Good evening, Dave, and welcome aboard.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I see a lot of familiar names out there in the chat roll. Great to see you guys.
Thank you, Dave. And also with us is Carl Bizon. Carl started as a mechanical engineer, and he's reached senior executive roles with world-leading manufacturing and distribution businesses in various sectors of the automotive industry. He has a career in the automotive industry spanning more than 25 years. His expertise and experience extends to mergers and acquisitions, manufacturing, operations, sales, and large project management. He's the CEO of the AMA Group. That's Australia's largest company-owned multi-shop operator. Welcome aboard, Carl, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me along.
Now, our next panelist is a gentleman by the name of Michael Wentworth. He's the Group CEO of Apprenticeships R Us. Unfortunately, his home has been flooded and he was unable to join us today. So, Michael, our thoughts are with you, and we hope you get dry pretty quickly.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're going to have about a 45 minute discussion. We're going to talk about the trends shaping body repairs in 2022. So we're going to look at four global repair collision trends that are covered today. So let me explain to you very simply how the operation works today. So we're going to talk, each one of us, I'll ask the panelists their ideas on certain sections. They will discuss whatever they say. We will have a Q&A at the end. In between that, we will have a live poll, and then we will go from segment to segment. So, but now we're going to start with trend number one, which is adapting to new technology. Now, we did 2 BodyShop News webinars on technology in 2021. It was ADAS and EVs. And 1 year on now, what are the technology trends shaping 2022? Is it still EVs and ADAS or something else? I'm going to start with Carl. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Michelle. I guess we're seeing it in a couple of areas. I think we know we run about 170 collision repair shops in Australia and New Zealand, and we're getting a lot of, well, I wouldn't say pressure, but we're getting encouraged by the insurers to go more digital in the way we process and manage claims. And I think, we're quite keen to head down that path if it makes sense, but I'm always conscious of the risk to the repairer when it comes to making assessments of damage and cost around some digital claims versus the proper skills of an experienced estimator in terms of, what is the scope of work to be done. And I think the second part of it, with our 3,700 odd employees is on the training piece, and just how we go about training a large multi-skilled workforce when there's various online training tools available. And I think we're going to end up in a hybrid world of both online and physical training, particularly when it comes to things like technology and composite materials. I think nothing beats the hands-on experience of dealing with the materials themselves. But I see an emerging role in online centralized training, particularly around, things like hybrid powertrains and EVs. I think that's going to be a part of our life.
Okay, that's a good look at things. All right, I'm going to go to the USA. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Guys, thanks again for having me. So listen, I want to talk about the EV trend over here. So I spoke to one of our clients just last week. This guy is like super excited about technology trends, right? I know, kind of weird, right? But his goal is to be known as the best EV repair center in Arizona. And so he's focusing his investments and his energy on that goal. So because he believes, as I do, that independent collision repair shops have this huge opportunity right now to differentiate themselves from the giant consolidator businesses by being the very best on a fewer number of vehicle makes, or in this client's case, EV vehicles, you see. So even even though in the U.S. Compared to some other countries, the adoption of EV has been, I believe, still a little bit behind the other countries actually. But I believe that there's a couple different factors that are going to massively increase the adoption rate over here. First of all, our best-selling vehicle in the U.S. has for many years been a truck, right? The F-150. And I think as more and more trucks become electric, I think that's going to change things dramatically over here. And also the range of battery life. When the Nissan Leaf was introduced in 2012, just a few miles from me in Smyrna, Tennessee, this thing would only go about 70 miles. Now these things can go hundreds of miles. And our fuel prices have doubled in the last year. So I think the writing is kind of on the wall that as a country, we need to reduce our nation's dependency on fossil fuels. That is going to drive EV and other technologies, in my opinion.
Oh, obviously that is a true fact. You're talking about EVs. I've just picked up one today for test driving, and I recalled my first EV that was an iMeave that had a range of about 50 miles. That was it. So we were worried from the dealership to the office whether we're going to make it or not. Continuing, Robert, your thoughts, if you don't mind, from the UK, from around the world.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, Michel. Last year we did a webinar on ADAS specifically, and that was very much a new technology. We were talking about it as a new technology at the time, but it's now absolutely standard and every day on the vast majority of repairs we see in our body shops in the UK. But we're also seeing this around the world. It's becoming standard around the world with IBIS. So for body shops, they really have to understand the cost of doing ADAS repairs. That's in the investment in the equipment and the options that are becoming available. Carl's just mentioned digitization, whereas you used to have physical boards and things like that for ADAS. Now, 1 year on, there are digital ADAS systems. So understand the cost and the investment, invest in the right things there. Also understand the time it takes to do ADAS repairs. Understand the complexities of it. So we're now seeing, instead of just front radar on vehicles, we're seeing 360 systems on vehicles on the roads today. Well, if you have a car with a 360 ADAS capability, then that means you need a repair bay 15 meters by 9 meters minimum, or with a flat calibrated floor. How many body shops have that sort of space? But they're going to need it. So it's really just understanding that it's about process, people, reinvestment, and lastly, and most importantly, what's really come to the fore, Michel, is the evidence of correct and accurate recalibration of these vehicles. Some body shops just do not have reliable evidence to say that they have recalibrated that ADAS correctly. And that is absolutely important. If you don't want to invest in the equipment yourself and you want to get a mobile operator in to do it for you, it's still your responsibility and still your credibility that's at stake. So the trend really is there for ADAS. It's here and now, not new, and you need to be on top of it, Michel.
And it's not going away. It's going to continue. It's going to get more and more every day. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so we've got an idea, thoughts and ideas. I'm going to go to a live poll. So the live poll is going to come on. That's it. You can see it. So we'd like to have your thoughts. Which technology trend do you see having the biggest impact? Is it digitization? We need to fully embrace digital claims. Is it hybrid learning, enabling dynamic access to training? Is it EVs? The growing car park will cause repair challenges? Or is it ADAS with accurate recalibration evidence being So if you don't mind just going to the poll section and giving us your thoughts, your ideas, click on your polls and we'll have a look at it in a few minutes. Meanwhile, allow me to thank our sponsors, because without our sponsors, we wouldn't be having this event today. So the AMA Group, Anest Iwata, Collision Repair Expo, and Sherwin Automotive Refinishes. Now, I'm going to have a look at the polls. Okay, so I'm going to quickly look. People are still polling. Could you please stop? This is your last chance to vote. After this, we will close the poll. So we're going to give you another 10, 15 seconds. I know people are just hitting furiously the buttons. I can see it's happening here. All right. I think the polls, yep, Albert says they're closed. All right. So we've closed the polls. Number one, EVs, the growing car park. That's actually number one, and ADAS. They are both on 29%. So these are the two biggest the biggest threats, I guess, that the industry is looking at. Digitization is very close at 24%, and the hybrid learning is in fourth position at 19%. So it's not bad. We've got a good idea of the thing. But Robert, what are your thoughts? I mean, you like polls, and you always come up to me and tell me what happened with the polls and his thoughts. So,
Well, like I said, Michelle, EVs and ADAS are hot topics around the world. And like I said earlier, they're not new anymore. They're here and now. So if you plan on having a business that's going to be around in the next 3 to 5 years, you need to get a grip of those two things. They're going to become your standard everyday repair.
you're not surprised. It's good to know. Carl, you're the biggest operator in Australia.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Look, I think there's no doubt that ADAS is here. I mean, I think if you're in a shop these days and you don't have, I mean, if you go back how many years before people didn't have scan tools in mechanical repair workshops, now scan tools are pretty common everywhere. I mean, how do you operate a shop without being able to clear fault codes? I mean, people like me own one myself. I mean, I carry one around. I mean, I think they're becoming very much the new technology, and I think ADAS is just becoming part of our life. I think for Australia, with EVs at kind of less than 1% of the vehicle car park and all the challenges that Australia is going to have with EVs, it's going to take a while. I mean, we look a whole lot different to the west coast of the US or European cities where the travelling distances are much smaller, or the UK, but it's going to come to Australia. And I think our shops are going to get, we're going to get time. I think the manufacturers are going to push us into it. But I believe it's part of our life. And, as I often say to our board, the repair is still the repair. The key issue for us is safety of all that stored energy in those massive battery packs. And I'm more concerned about our employee safety than I am about our ability to straighten a guard, whether it was on an EV or a hybrid or a traditional combustion vehicle. I think the work will be the work. My concern is foremost about our employee safety and how we manage the different work methods that are involved in managing that massive amount of stored energy. And anyone who's shorted out even a 12-volt battery and see the energy that can be discharged, you can imagine that on a much, much larger scale. That's kind of what's got me concerned about EVs.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we did talk about this thing in our EV section, and it was an eye-opener even for me and for a lot of people who actually wrote up about it. Dave, your quick thoughts, Habibi?
Yeah, I agree with Carl on this. I think that eventually the EV will be, the biggest trend that we see. However, I think our more immediate needs is getting this ADAS thing figured out and getting shops doing that correctly, or having the space to do it, like Robert mentioned earlier, is a big issue. And so I think that is probably one of the biggest trends that we're seeing and for more immediate needs. If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you again. I'm going to move on quickly to our second trend. Let's look at a trend that's already having a significant impact: parts and product supply chains. What trends are you seeing, and what are the proactive leaders doing about this? Can I start with you, Carl, please?
Sure, Michelle. I mean, I think I think there's a lot going on in the parts supply chain. Some of it, I think when I think about the OEMs and some of the aftermarket or parallel import wholesalers, I think some of it we've managed well, and some of it is a bit of a self-induced crisis. But I think the manufacturers have been to a school where they're not letting any chance go by to improve their margins. I think parts cost inflation is just run rampant, and I think for us as consumer of those parts, and also for the insurers, there's not a lot you can do about it. At the end of the day, parts supply is tight. They can blame container costs out of Europe or container price out of, they can blame whatever they like, but at the end of the day, parts margins for the OEMs have gone up substantially, and I don't see that coming off anytime soon. I think for us, that underlines the important role of recycled parts. And I think in a time where parts supply is tight, particularly in Australia, there's a certain attitude to recycled parts and the effect that introducing a recycled part into a repair has on the efficiency of that repair. And, I often say to the OEMs, a recycled part was an OEM part at some stage. When that guard was bolted onto the side of that 3 Series in Germany, it was an OEM part. The fact that it's been unbolted and needs to get bolted back on, it's still an OEM part, providing it can obviously be certified as being fit for purpose. But there's a reluctance in the trade, I know from our own shops, to manage recycled parts, because sometimes it can be, it can mean extra work. Which then leads me to the next topic of repair versus replace. And one thing that's happened, particularly as parts have gone up in price, I think that the economic equation about repairing something versus replacing it has shifted. And for us and our shops, that's a big job for them, particularly for estimators, to keep a track of what is the real cost today of that part. But also for the insurers, they might not want to wait for the new part, because they've got a policyholder in a rental car, and they can actually, to spend, 4 or 5 hours repairing a part that they otherwise would have said was uneconomic. If the part's not available, you're going to repair that part, because you've got to get that policyholder out of that rental car, could be 2 or 3 weeks earlier. So I think it's changing the way a lot of people think about a lot of things, whether it's your mindset around recycle parts or it's your mindset around repair versus replace, and keeping your finger on the pulse of just what's happening to parts prices, because some of, we've seen some panels go up by 25, 26%, and there's a fair bit of labor that can be absorbed and still be better off than replacing that panel.
Yeah. All right, that's a very good thoughts. Dave, your thoughts, your ideas?
Yeah, I want to piggyback a little bit on what Carl said. In terms of repair versus replace, we still, despite having supply chain shortages and very bad ones, quite honestly, here in North America, we're still faced with the decision on can the repair be done correctly? And when the answer is no, then we do need to turn to parts. And we're struggling to locate parts right now, and there seems to be no real consistency on makes and models of the type of vehicles that are affected, nor no consistency really on even the type of the part that is affected. Right. So some shop owners who are typically reluctant to source, recycled, used, green parts, whatever you want to call them, or aftermarket parts, are now attempting to source them out of desperation. But many of my clients are reporting that the recycled and the aftermarket supply chains are just as strained in North America as the new OEM supply chain is. So it doesn't seem to be helping very much. So what some wise shops are doing is they're turning to like nationwide dealer part search engines. There's a couple of them that we use. One's called partsvoice.com, and another one's called Parts Eye, which is a solution that is a resource of a company over here called OE Connect. So those are a couple things that people are doing. They're searching the entire country to find the parts that they need, and price almost becomes secondary. So to avoid cash flow issues that are brought on by excess parts and the vehicle work in process, right? The inventory is growing because they've got cars sitting around waiting on parts. So the smarter operators are turning to advanced repair planning programs, much like you would see with VDA over in the UK, for example. So proper repair planning, and then capturing 100% of the parts that they need prior to bringing the repair jobs in, when that's possible, is what the smarter shops are doing. Hope that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure Robert would agree with you on this one.
Yeah, parts are a problem around the world. I mean, talking specifically in the UK, Michel, we're seeing about 20 to 30% back order of parts lines. So again, every repair is being affected by parts. It's very rare that you can get the entire parts baskets off the bat from your supplier. And what that's doing, of course, is really affecting the way that the body shops are operating. What are the smart guys doing about it? Well, they're really digging in and knowing their numbers. They're getting more focused on running a business, not just a body shop. And what they're doing is really understanding where the numbers are in the business, what the real effect of that supply chain problem is on their cash flow and their cash reserves. We're just off the back of a global pandemic. They don't have the reserves they used to have to finance this. And what it's really meaning is that some of these jobs and the key-to-key times are just going out the window. You know, the vehicles are taking 2 to 3 months longer to complete. So they're really understanding how they need to fund and finance that new gap. And they're also going back to their repair operation, and they're refocusing on that and rejigging that aligned to the reality of supply chain problems. So they're looking at things like not ordering parts in the last few days of the month, making sure they get that extra 30-day credit. They're going back to their booking in dates and their booking in system and constantly reviewing that to make sure vehicles that they can get the parts are being brought forward, vehicles where they still can't get the parts are being put back. Courtesy car costs, they've got customers in courtesy cars. You can't get more courtesy cars, there isn't the new car stock. So therefore, they've got this whole mobility problem in their customer base that they're having to try and manage and communicate with. And as I said, the smart guys really are understanding the fact that this supply chain equals cash problems. Know the numbers, finance the gap, and review your operations to manage this problem. It's not going to be a short-term thing, Michel. This problem with parts and supply chain is going to be with us all of this year and beyond. So you need to have a plan in place now.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I'm going to go to a live poll, but just to remind everyone, if you have any questions to ask, please go to your question, little gizmo thing on the right-hand side at the bottom there, and just put some questions through. The panelists would be happy to answer them as soon as we finish our little segment. So the live poll now, we're going to talk about the 4 options. What do you think will be the biggest growth trend with parts? Is it repairing more parts rather than replacing them? Is it better parts order and parts management process? Using more green parts or reused parts in repairs? Or is it the parts supply increasing repair cash flow problems? So just go to your polls on the right-hand side down there. You've got 1 minute, please. After that, we're going to close the polls. So tell us what your thoughts are, and we'll come back to you. But meanwhile, also, if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Go to the question segment, put some questions through, and I'm sure Dave, Robert, and Carl would be more than happy at the end of the little segments to go through that. Okay, let me remind you again. We got 4 sponsors, and without them, we wouldn't have had this show here. So the AMA Group, thank you. Anest, Iwata, thank you. The Collision Repair Expo, which is next month, by the way, you've got to get down to Melbourne and attend to that because all of these people are going to be there. And also Sherwin Williams Auto Refinishes. So we would love to see you down there. Okay, now the polls are closed. I'm going to go to the final. Oh, wow. So 59% is better parts order and parts management processes. And it drops to 27% for repairing more parts than replacing them. In third position on 9% is parts supply is increasing the repair cash flow problems. And wow, it blows me away. 5% of using more green parts in repairs. That is a bit disappointing. It's a bit disappointing. Yeah, Dave, your thoughts. You're a bit disappointed like me, I guess. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the first consideration is the safety of the vehicle repairs and performing the repairs according to the OEM procedures. Having said that, that kind of helps us make the decision on what type of parts to use. So I really think that, at least in North America, we are behind other parts of the world in terms of advanced repair planning, getting an accurate appraisal on the front end, and then getting 100% of the parts ordered delivered. Now, to do that, I also feel that we need to build some better relationships with our vendor partners, right? Because they're struggling too. A lot of the dealers have a smaller parts room than the body shops that they serve. So we have to be cognizant of that, work with them, understand that they're a partner, but we still don't want those parts delivered until we have enough to complete the vehicle. That's my take on it.
Good idea. Carl, what are your thoughts?
Look, Michel, I think it's clear to us that you've got to be more engaged in part supply than you've ever been before. I mean, I think that I think the days of just being able to place an order on an OEM and get 2 milk runs a day and it all turns up, and you get the odd thing that gets pushed outside and brought back in a couple of days later. I mean, I think the parts procurement guy is a very key part of your team now in terms of, what are the options, whether they're parallel import parts or OEM parts. But you've got to be on top of it. It's a lot more complex than it's ever been. And I think, one of the challenges we've got is also managing the policyholder who's looking for a definitive date on when their car's going to be finished. And, one of the challenges we have with the OEMs is actually getting real live dates out of people, for your own workshop planning, but as well as keeping the customer satisfied. So I think, I agree. I think this is going to be another 12 months at least before this pans out anytime soon. I don't see any price deflation. I think once prices have gone up, they're never going to come back down again. I think that parts procurement guy inside your business is a very critical part of the business that's going to need a lot of attention, and you've got to be adaptable. I think it's one of the most complicated times for the procurement of parts, I think, that many industries have seen, whether you're on the mechanical side or on the collision repair side. And a lot of times there are no answers. The OEMs themselves don't have the answers on when some particular parts are going to be available. You've got to adapt.
Most of the OEMs don't do their own parts. We know this. So, Robert, your thoughts?
Well, I think 59% of people are saying better parts order and parts management processes are the key point, and they have everything that they need in their business to do that right now. It doesn't take any new investment, doesn't take any more people. Like I said, you can just go back and refocus on that in the parts supply context. So it's good that they've identified that, but there's nothing stopping them being better at that parts management either. So yeah, I would say that that's absolutely a good takeaway, is to go back and look at your business through this new lens of parts supply. Repairing more parts than replacing them, as Carl and Dave have alluded to, safety and integrity is absolutely key. So repair over replace is not the right thing. Repair or replace is absolutely the right thing. So look at those vehicles where you could replace it, you could repair it, and think about it. What is going to be the best for the customer? What's going to preserve the integrity of the vehicle? What's going to produce a great repair and a great customer experience?
Very well said. All right. Yeah. We're going to go to the third segment that we're doing now, and that is attracting, developing, and retaining good people. It doesn't matter where you operate in the world or how good a business you are. Chances are people puzzles are keeping you awake at night. I'm sure this affects everybody. Robert, you're the one who's shaking his head the most. So what's keeping you up? I mean, you've been up since 4 o'clock this morning. So
yeah, up since 4 for this webinar, Michel. But awake since 3, worrying about the people in our business. So it wasn't a problem. I think that there's some great initiatives going on in businesses. People are starting to wake up to needing to do something better with their people. And very often in our industry, Michel, it all starts going wrong after the induction phase. We work so hard to try and find somebody, we induct them into the business, and then it all pretty much dies away quite quickly from there. So I think people are looking for different things. We have to understand that the people within our business today and the people we want to attract to our business tomorrow are looking for different things from their employers. We need to provide different things. We're in a very, very competitive market for people. It's not just body shops. Every industry is screaming out for more people. So we're going to have to fight harder to attract those talented individuals into our industry instead of something that they might perceive as better. So to do that, we're going to need a lot of personalization. They want their career, their path. They want to know that they're going to be developed. They don't care about what our standard model is anymore. They want to know what's in it for me. And we need to answer that question and build a structure. Now, to do that, we're going to have to look much more long-term, Michel. And we're going to have to really think about how we can continue developing our people long-term so that they're always involved in a development project with you. You see, people don't quit their jobs like we say they do. We say, oh, he's quit his job. They don't quit their jobs. They quit the business. They quit the leader who stopped developing them. Exactly. That's why they go and do the same job for another body shop down the road. If they quit their job, they'd leave the industry, wouldn't they? Yeah. Now, what we need to do is think longer term, continually develop them, continually make them aware that this next part of growing them is in the pipeline and committed to, because it's not always what you think it is. When was the last time we actually asked our staff, what do you want to know? We know what they need to know, but what do they want to know? And how can we help them do that? There might be some surprising results.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talk about return on investment in training. What happens if I train my staff and they leave me? And we discussed in a previous webinar, well, what happens if you train the staff and they leave you? Okay, well, what happens if you don't train the staff and they stay? You know, return on investment from us as businesses, Michel, but think about it. They've got quite an invested stake in our businesses, right? They're giving us 3, 5, 10, 20, 30 years of their working life. That's some investment from their side. And what are we really doing to earn it?
Yeah, very well said, Robert. Carl, your thoughts?
Look, Michelle, I think as an MSO, we certainly have a very large opportunity for employees. I mean, I think that one of the benefits of an MSO is you can provide career pathways for people, you know, from someone who's a car detailer all the way through to becoming a repair center manager or a regional manager or moving into, you know, procurement or any level of specialization. So I think from our perspective as an MSO, we try to continually remind our people that, you know, that there is a long and wide opportunity for them to build a career in a large company that can provide many pathways for personal growth. I think to Robert's point, you know, there's the old saying that, you know, people leave bad managers, they don't leave bad jobs. And I think, you know, I've left plenty of bad managers in my 40 odd years at work. Bloody good companies, but I've left because of poor leadership. And I think one of the things we're focusing on is frontline leadership training for our repair centre managers so that they provide not only good management, but good leadership. And there is a very big difference between management and leadership.
Absolutely.
And you know, so, you know, the key thing to us holding on to our staff is not what we do here in corporate. I mean, we're somewhat irrelevant when it comes to retaining people at the coalface. It's how well our 180 odd sites, including our warehouses, perform in engaging with our employees and making them feel valued, making sure they've got a safe place to work and making them feel like they're making a difference. You know, we've launched initiatives like an employee share program and all sorts of things to improve our employee value proposition, to make them feel like they're working for something where they've got some skin in the game as much as anybody else. But, you know, the biggest problem we've got in Australia is I think there's somewhere between a 7 and a 10% shortage of skilled labour. And I know, talking to my counterparts in the US, you know, other MSOs in the US, they've got the same problem where, you know, there is a skilled labour shortage. We've recently announced that this year we're employing 168 first-year apprentices on top of the 300 apprentices we've already got in the business. So I think, you know, at some level, a business owner or an MSO can whine about the shortage of people, but I say to them all, what are you doing about it? You know, investing in apprentices is something that's in your control. You know, out of 3,700 staff, we're going to have 470 apprentices. I mean, that's commitment to training, what, you know, actually doing something, not just whining about it, but what are you going to do about it? So I think we've got to all develop the workforce of the future. We've got to provide our people with a pathway. We've got to make them feel like they're valued. And we've got to give them an environment where they feel like they're being valued, and, you know, and they'll stay with you by and large, because people want that surety of employment, and they want, you know, whatever it is their employee value proposition is that resonates with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said, Dave. You're a man who actually talks to people, and you train them and you motivate them. What are your thoughts?
It's a big subject, something I am very passionate about. You know, we may have a shortage of skilled labor, but we also have a belief that there is a shortage of good places to work. So what we're seeing a small handful of outliers do is quite simple, actually. They're redesigning their business models to be more in alignment with the needs and the values of the available workforce. Right? We've got to, it's kind of like a magnet, right? If we want to attract people, we've got to turn the magnet around the right way, or we're just going to be repelling people. And that's essentially what we've been doing as an industry, right? So some of these outliers, as I call them, are moving away from commission-based pay plans, for example. They're moving more towards a team-like environment that the younger generation likes to work in, offering a little flexibility in the work schedules. Okay. You know, for example, there's a shop out in California, one of our clients, they moved to an hourly pay system and a 4-day work week. right? His competitors all thought he was crazy until all of his competitors' employees started applying to work at George's shop, right? So my company, we've developed a new division, and we'll soon be teaching shops all over the world these specific strategies. And any shop can do this, right? To help shops supercharge their business and attract and keep the best employees. But let it suffice to say that for now, the world's largest workforce is the millennial and the Generation Z workforce. And shops need to become more attractive to them if they want to survive. It's really that simple.
Okay, that's a great thought, and it's great ideas. All right, we're going to go for a live poll as usual. Let's start with, we've got 4 questions here for you. What is your biggest opportunity in the people's trend? Being better at engaging school, colleges, and young talent, being better at attracting skilled or semi-skilled talent, being better at developing and retaining your staff, or being better at rethinking your return on investment and your remuneration. So the polls are open right now, and as usual, we've got 1 minute to go. So please go to your polls, and that will give me a chance to thank again our sponsors, AMA Group. The AMA Group, not only they're sponsoring us, but we also got their CEO here talking with us, which is great. Anest Iwata, the Collision Repair Expo, which is coming up next month, and Sherwin Williams, who's always supported us since day one. Thank you for all our sponsors here today, and thank you all for being there, watching us up there. I can see a lot of good names here, and thank you for having you here. So Albert is just making the bell over there. We got about 5 seconds to go, so please put your votes through. I'm not going to count down, so it's about 3, 2, 1, and the polls are closed. And wow, number 1 at 63% is being better at developing and retaining our staff, which is exactly what I thought. 20% and number 2 is being better at engaging schools, colleges, and young talent. 8% is being better at attracting semi-skilled or skilled talent. And 8% is being better at rethinking our return on investment and remuneration. All right, well, that's the poll, and I'm going to be asking very quickly because I don't want to run out of time today. We seem to be going very, very well. Dave, your thoughts?
I'm really proud of this audience. They're taking personal responsibility, right? Everybody wants to say, right, we got to keep working with schools. That's something that we absolutely must do. But until we can take personal responsibility and do a better job at developing and retaining our staff, we're never going to have the type of business that these young people are going to want to come to work for. So great job to you guys.
Thank you. Robert, your thoughts again, briefly.
Well, I would summarize it, Michel, as saying, remember this mantra: people tolerate managers, but they love leaders. The millennial generation, as Dave highlighted, are looking for different things than we look for when we applied for jobs in our past career. They're looking for corporates with leaders who have great vision, have great clarity, have great eco credentials and sustainability. They want to feel part of a team. So yeah, they want to be led. People only tolerate managers, but they will love leaders. Be a good leader, not a good manager.
Absolutely. All right, Carl, last but not least, very briefly.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, I think everybody understands in this business, like in many other businesses that look like it, people are critical to the success of your business, and they're fundamental to your revenue capacity. If you don't have the people to be able to execute the work that you're able to attract, you've got nothing. So, holding onto your people, empowering them, leading them, managing them, and running a good shop is just critical. You're nothing without good people. Absolutely nothing. No matter how good you are as an owner or as a manager, you're nothing without a great team.
I agree, absolutely. All right. Thank you for this section. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, please put it in the question tab. Put some questions through, and we'll have some time to talk about it just later on. All right. 4th trend is rising costs and inflation. So this is a trend that sort of worries me and it worries everybody in business. The costs are rising fast. Inflation is growing, and this is having a major squeeze on body shops' viability as they are caught in the middle. Now, what are you seeing happen as a result of rising costs and inflation? I'll start very briefly with Carl.
Look, I think, Michel, from my perspective as a relative newcomer to the industry, I think it's challenging the revenue models. And I think, Australia has sort of kind of run away with this fixed price model that has served the insurers well. And, I'm pressing hard to get it to reflect an environment where there are rising costs, both in parts and in people. And at the end of the day, I want to be a part of an industry that gets paid properly for what it does. And I think everyone can use various pricing methodologies to get market share, but ultimately we're in this to create value for ourselves as shareholders, or for, if you're an owner operator, for your own, for you and your own team. So I think, what it means to AMA is, I think we're challenging a lot of our revenue models. And I think we're going into deep discussions with insurers about, fundamentally, in a high inflation environment, is how do we get paid properly, and how do we get rewarded for the value and the expertise and the investment and the work that we put in keeping their policyholders happy. And I think that's part of the biggest challenges, is getting compensated for it, knowing that by far a big chunk of it is outside of our control. We're the meat and the sandwich between the parts suppliers and an insurance company in the main.
Okay, very well said. Robert, your thoughts?
Well, again, at IBIS events, Michel, we're seeing this problem all around the world. This clearly is a global problem that we're having to deal with. Like we said, operational costs are rising, and we're not going to be able to do anything about that. We can't manage, retain the same costs we used to have for things like people, energy, products, parts, materials. They're all going up. So what this meaning is, we are caught in the middle as body shops. We are squeezed. The margin that we're able to retain is tighter than ever. Now, at the same time, of course, technology has exploded. We've already talked today about digitization, the need to reinvest in ADAS and electric vehicles. So the car park of these vehicles is far greater today than it was 12 months ago. So while we're needing to invest and plan for the future, we're unable to build the reserves to do that. So what we need to do is just be aware there is a potential capability gap developing in our industry, where inflation is, as I said, taking out any margin we have. At the same time, we should be investing more than we ever have before to retain this capability and stay at the cutting edge. There is a real risk of this capability gap developing over the next couple of years in the industry.
Indeed. Dave?
Yep. It would be great to revamp our revenue model, have higher labor rates. That is all a problem. But something that we have immediate control, in my opinion, a couple things, is energy. So first, let me address human energy. There's a tremendous amount of waste as it relates to system inefficiencies with most of the shops that I see out there. In the US, we only produce about 2 hours per day on a repair. That's incredibly inefficient, so that's a good place to start. Second, the waste of our natural resources, such as electricity and natural gas. So I was recently in the great state of Texas, where everything is big, including the consumption of energy. And a shop I visited had, get this, 6 paint booths in operation. And I noticed that a couple of these paint booths were on a baking cycle at 140 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's about 60 degrees Celsius. And with only like a bumper cover and a fender in it, right? Or what you call in Australia a guard, or in the UK, I think you call it a wing. See, I speak multiple languages. So they would use all of that natural gas for a full bake cycle to only bake a small part, right? And I think there's much smarter ways to do that, much like AMA does over there with gas catalytic drying systems, where you only bake the part of the car that you instruct the robot to do, right? So I think there's a lot of things we can do with human energy and our natural resources to help bring costs down. And those are things that we can control.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, obviously. Great thoughts. And so, all right. So we'll go to our live poll. Just to give you an idea, so the live poll and this time is, which of these costs trends is causing you the most concern? Is it the product and material costs that we cannot pass on? Is it salary packages, which we need to have to attract and retain good staff? Is it energy costs that we can't absorb and sustain? Or is it the repayment preventing reinvestment to keep up with the technology? So the polls are open. Please go to your polls. We've got 1 minute to go. And please ask us questions if you want. We've got a few questions ready for our panelists when we finish the webinar itself. Meanwhile, again, thank you to our sponsors, the AMA Group, Anest Iwata, the Collision Repair Expo, and Sherwin Automotive Refinishes. And our poll is going to close in 30 seconds. So if you're, ladies and gentlemen, you're ready to put your votes through. And we're down to 10. And slowly going to 5. Yep. I think everybody else. Yep, the polls are closed. Okay, so we'll have a look at the polls. Which of these cost trends is causing you the most concern? Well, 42% believe it is product and material costs that we cannot pass on. Very closely at 38% is salary packages that are required to attract and retain good staff. Down in third position at 15% is repayments preventing reinvestment to keep up. And in fourth position at 4% is the energy costs that we cannot absorb and sustain. If I can go back to Dave and I have your thoughts on these figures, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that it was almost a dead heat between salary packages and product and material costs. It was a nose to nose there at the last second. I agree with the audience here. I would challenge some of you in terms of salary packages. Something that I noticed, and I heard Carl say this earlier. People will come to work for you in some cases at a price that might surprise you if you can show them a proper career path. If you can show them how you will help them reach their career goals, you might be surprised at the salary package that's needed to do that. I know that's kind of different thinking, but I would challenge people to explore that.
Okay, thank you for that. Carl, your thoughts?
Look, I just think it's one of those times, Michelle, when business operators have got to be very close to their own numbers. I think in a period of inflation, I know now as an MSO, we're lucky in that we look at our branches, on a monthly basis and through the month in terms of where our margins are sitting. And I think there's an opportunity for an operator of any size to make sure they're close to their numbers so they understand what's going on before it sneaks up on them. And I've watched a number of businesses fail over the years where they just haven't been close enough to their P&L or their balance sheet, and they've relied on intuition to run their business because they've been doing it for many years. They can feel it. Well, feel your P&L, feel your numbers as much as you feel your shop by walking around, because there's some canaries in the coal mine in a P&L or a balance sheet that you should become familiar with. Even if you're not, find someone who can help you understand it, because these things are impactful, and the sooner you get on top of them, the better.
Absolutely. Robert, last but not least.
What struck me about that poll result, Michel, was that the top two there are the things that you can physically see all day, every day. If gas or electric came in a box and you actually had to open the box and use it, you'd be a bit more aware of it, but you don't always see it and think about it. But we've got to face the fact that if you think energy costs are high today, wait till you see it in 6 months' time. We're not anywhere near the peak yet. So if you think it's a bit tight now, where are you going to be in 6 months and 12 months' time? Repayments and reinvestments. You've got 1 or 2 bits of equipment you're sort of aware that you need to be looking at the moment. What about when you've got $1 million that you've fallen behind because you haven't kept pace with it? Operationally, people and products are things you can see and touch, and they're in your face every day. But as Carl was alluding to earlier, if we just go back to those things that have maybe a little bit hidden and in the numbers showing you when you actually invest quality time to look at them and understand them, you'll maybe see a different picture. And so energy and this capability gap are huge things. Please don't ignore it.
Okay, that is very, very true. You're right. If we could box it, you could feel it. But it just comes at the end of the month. You get a bill. Oh, geez, that bill is high. But okay, I'll pay it. I've got no choice to do anything about it. Gentlemen, thank you for the whole general idea. Let's go with some questions. We've got some really nice questions here from Colin Edwards from GPI. Colin's asking, how does the group see the pricing of consumables in the next 12 months? It's a very, very loaded question. Who would like to answer this? Put your hand up, whoever's game to answer that one. Oh, Carl, okay.
All right, Carl, thank you for taking this one.
I'd say, Colin, what are you telling us? I'd like to see consumables stay flat. Thanks, Colin. It'd be really good. I think anything that's got commodities in it is under pressure. Whether it's the paint companies with, some of the raw materials that are subject to global pricing. I think we're going to see that over time. I don't see the consumables business as anything other than it's going to be subject to the same inflationary pressures that everybody else is, whether it's shipping costs to get from the manufacturer to the country of use, or whether it's the raw materials that go into the production process, or it's a wholesaler taking advantage of a whole bunch of cost increases to put their prices up. I think we're going to see movement. I think whenever there's a shortage of something, there's going to be movements. And whilst we'd like to suppress it, because at the end of the day, we've all got limited ability to charge insurers more because masking tape or filler went up. At the end of the day, it'll be what it'll be.
Yeah. Somehow I don't think Colin was having a go at anything. I think Colin is generally worried about it because he feels the cost of shipping and the cost of moving stock from suppliers is going through the roof. So, Robert, what would you like to say?
Yes, and of course, it's undoubtedly going to go up. Of course, costs are going to go up. So what we're seeing the smart guys do, Michel, around the world is they're starting to implement things like core product lists into their business. So they're actually defining the core list of consumable products that business needs. So instead of having 8 grades of abrasive, if you can manage on 6 or 7 or 4 or 3 or whatever it is, just have that defined list. And what they're getting then is a much better turnover of stock, less open stock in the shop. And they're buying those products and shortening the time from when they buy it to when they sell it out. So core product lists are really great. Wastage, just focus on your wastage. We see value in 5 litres of clear coat or 3 litres of base coat because we understand that's expensive. We don't always attach that same value to a roll of masking tape or a sanding disc. And yet, increasingly these costs are going up by the same sort of percentages. So what we need to do is really see consumables as important. Have a core product list, look at your cash flow again, shorten that time between purchasing and selling it, and really look at your wastage. Start measuring your wastage and reducing it. That will mitigate any price rises you're undoubtedly going to see.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go to another question here from Andrew Stoddart. What is the opinion on the OEM taking more control of vehicle repairs rather than the insurer? Who would like to? Dave. Okay.
I'll take first crack at that. I can't tell you exactly how many years ago it was, but the manufacturers started to realize there was a direct connection between vehicles being properly repaired and brand loyalty. So in other words, if a Toyota went into a repair shop, it wasn't repaired correctly, there was a likelihood that the next time that person purchased a vehicle, they would switch brands. So this has become a very hot topic in the States in the last 5-10 years. And I think that, very much the OEMs are trying to take a little bit more control over not the repairing the vehicle themselves, but putting them in certified shops so that they are repaired correctly. And so there's a little bit of a struggle between, direct repair programs and OEM programs. And I think that the OEM certifications will kind of become the new direct repair program, so to speak.
Okay, well, this is something that we've had in Australia, what we call a badge repairs, people having a badge of a company and so on. I don't know whether this is going to make much difference. Carl, have you got a thought on that one?
I think we've got a number of badges across our sites, and I think if a repairer does a good job in a workmanlike manner and uses OEM repair methods and provides a safe, proper repair, we've got nothing to worry about. I think what the OEMs are really trying to address is the people who are cutting corners or trying to give the consumer something back that was less than what the car was that was built. And I think as I often say to people, if you've got nothing to worry about, you've got nothing to worry about. And I just see the OEMs taking a greater role in this as probably being good for the industry. If it shakes out some of the cowboys and it shakes out some of the people that we're all pricing against who are not doing the right thing, that's got to be a good thing for the industry. So, compliance, proper work methods, proper equipment, and proper repairs is good for the industry. And if the OEMs are starting to squeeze that lever from their side and it forces people out of the industry that probably shouldn't be participating, that we're pricing against, I think that's a good thing for the industry. I wouldn't see it as a negative per se. I can only see positives from it.
Awesome. All right. We've got one more question. I mean, we've got more questions, but I've only got time for one more question.
Okay.
And this one is from David Thomas. And he's asking, if the primary issue is parts availability via OEMs, would it not be more prudent for the industry to focus on how to repair parts, perhaps through collective investment in new technology and processes, so that there is less reliance on OEM and less pressure on parts procurement? Robert, your thoughts? I think you're good at answering this one.
Yeah, it came back to, I think, an answer I gave earlier, Michel, which was, looking at the right repair. One of the ways you can do to manage part shortages is to look at that repair at that estimate stage in the context of, is it repairable? Repair over replace drives the wrong behaviors, but repair or replace. I mean, up this end of the scale, you've got a part that's definitely repairable. At this end, you've got one that's completely broken and definitely needs replacing. But this section of repairs in the middle here, you do have a choice. And that really comes down to making sure that you have the right skills in the team, the right resources like equipment in the team to give yourself the capability of repair it. Again, avoid that capability gap. But one of the ways of managing parts availability is to repair things properly. As long as you are doing it within the guidance of an OEM approved repair method, that you're protecting the integrity of the vehicle and you're preparing that vehicle and that customer for the next accident, then that repair may be perfectly viable. It may be a better solution for the client and the customer, reduces the key to key time, reduces the cost of claim for the insurer, and produces an equally good standard of repair.
All right, thank you, Robert. Now we're out of time on questions, but I just want to read a statement from Colin Edwards, who I have a lot of respect for. Colin says shipping costs have currently risen by 400% on a 40-foot container from China to Australia, and shippers are choosing to not ship flammable or hazardous cargo. That's a bit of a tough one. This is only a statement. We're not going to comment on that one, just for everybody else to hear and talk about.
Well, there's a car carrier that was recently on the bottom of the ocean that was also that might be thinking about EVs and flammable cars as well, because look at the havoc with that. That's another whole can of worms, maybe for another day.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, we've come to the end of our little webinar, and can I just ask each one of you just a quick summary, your thoughts on the webinar, your thoughts on what we talked about today. Dave, may I start with you?
Absolutely. So listen, there's two kinds of people. There's those that look at all that we discussed today as problems, and there's those that look at these topics as opportunities. And if I were you, I would choose the latter, right? We live in what I think is the most exciting time of our industry. I know it's stressful. I know there's challenges, but this is the most exciting time our industry has ever experienced. And your success or failure depends primarily on your attitude. That's all I got to say about that.
Hey, I agree with you. Robert, please.
Yeah, three types of businesses, Michelle, emerging from the pandemic and facing these challenges today. Those that are making it happen, those that are watching others make it happen, and those that are just hiding in their office and wondering what the hell's happening. So be the first one. You can make it happen, but you've got to choose to commit. You are not going to get the reaction you want unless you make a commitment first to do something about it. If you don't have the skills in the business, you can rent them in. You don't have to employ all these people, but you need to get the skills to give yourself the capability to deal with it. Run a business. Don't just run a body shop. Run a business.
Thank you for that. Carl, may we have your thoughts?
Yeah, I just think it's I think there's a crisis gives an opportunity for businesses to perform very, very well, because there are managers out there who can manage the complexities of a crisis and will end up doing very well. And I think in some industries there will be some participants that will shake out of it who weren't able to manage, and I think those participants who can seek help, good advisors, learn more about the sensitivities of their own market and engage properly with their people and properly with their customers, they will survive and prosper. I mean, I think there's people who have made super profits out of this pandemic through demand and pricing that they've never even thought of or seen before in their lives. And there's other people like panel shops at the other end of the scale who have suffered from a reduction in volume. I think those who have learned to deal with that complexity will do very well. Never waste the opportunity to learn, never waste the opportunity to get closer to your business and closer to your people and closer to your customers. You'll learn more and you'll develop as a person, you'll develop as a leader and a manager, and you'll end up with a better business on the other side.
Hear. That's very, very well said. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time. We really appreciate you being with us today on our webinar. And to our listeners, our viewers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for being here today. This webinar is the third in a series, and we'll probably have another one coming up within 2 to 3 months. We don't have a date exactly, but you will hear about it, just like you heard about this one. I also want to thank our sponsors. Without them, again, this show would not be here. So AMA Group, Anest, Iwata, the Collision Repair Expo, and Sherwin Williams Automotive Refinishes. And thank you again, and I'll hand you back to Albert.
Brings us to the end of the March 2022 BodyShop News webinar. I would like to thank our panelists for that very insightful discussion. It was quite amazing. Thank you to Robert Snook from BSG Global, MG Cannon and IBIS, Dave Luehr from Elite Bodyshop Solutions, Carl Bizon from AMA Group, and our moderator and BodyShop News publisher, Michel Malik. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you, our audience, for coming today to participate. We really enjoyed your attendance here, and we do hope you'll join us again in the future. We'll let you know when our next webinar is coming up, so keep an eye on our website and subscribe to our email newsletter if you haven't already. We hope we'll see you again for another insightful discussion. Again, thank you to our sponsors, AMA Group, Anest, Iwata, the Collision Repair Expo, and Sherwin Williams Automotive Finishes. It wouldn't have been possible to bring you all of this today without their support. We will have this webinar up on our website again, so you can watch it again at a later date. Just go to bodyshopnews.net/webinars to watch it again. Thank you again all for coming, and good night.